Oh yeah, perfect. Okay, great. So I guess with this one then, yeah, let's have you guys introduce yourselves as well, and then we'll jump right into it. So we can start with you, Austin, and go down this way.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Austin. I'm from Scrum Ventures. Scrum Ventures is based here in San Francisco. We're a seed and Series A investor. And we have invested in a couple companies in this space, including Dashbot and Glowing.io.
My name is Eyal. I'm CTO for Imperson. We build conversational interfaces for enterprises and brands.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikhil. I work in Autodesk, and I work as a conversation engineer. We've been building our own Autodesk virtual assistant in-house for the past year.
Hi, my name is Joanne Chen. I'm an investor at Foundation Capital. We've been around for 23 years, 200 investments, 27 IPOs. I've invested in the conversational AI space for some time, have 3 companies currently in our portfolio.
Cool. So the first question I have for you guys is, who are the brands that you're seeing right now that are leveraging chatbots the best?
Your brand is leveraging chatbots.
Yeah. So I guess this counts as self-promotion, but so we've been doing it for the past year. So Autodesk Virtual Assistant, as I already mentioned, is the chatbot that we built for customer support. Currently, it handles or speaks to about 2,300 users a day. And in terms of time to resolution, which is kind of the metric we care about, we are down to 5 or 4.9 minutes. So that's something that we are excited about.
So I think in the past 3 years, we've been mainly focused on brands. So we've done all the major media brands: Disney, Universal, CBS, ABC. Non-media brands, Hyundai, Jack in the Box. I think many brands are using chatbots today. However, until today or until recently, we've seen mostly experimental or tactical solutions. And I think what we are going forward, I think we start seeing brands taking chatbots more seriously and considering deployments which are more strategic and long-term. I think in the past 3 years, it was mostly either campaign-based, tactical, but we do see this trend of adopting chatbots as a strategic, as an enterprise-wide solution, and I think that's where we are heading now.
I'm going to take this a little bit of a different angle. I invested in a company called Maya, which is a conversational AI in the recruiting space. And I think with recruiting, that it's very different from content marketing or commerce, in the sense that Maya is automating the recruiting process by screening candidates, by having conversations with them from the very beginning in which they apply all the way to the in-person interview process. Maya is doing this for over 100 companies today, and they're doing this at scale and with very interesting volumes. And I think the reason why Maya has been successful in building a solution is because the problem is very constrained. It's very high volume. This is for mostly blue-collar workers. It's very high volume. So, for example, Amazon hires 100,000 blue-collar workers per year. Nike hires over 10,000 retail associates per year. And these people historically have been screened by recruiters who spend 20 minutes per candidate asking them a set of questions. And now Maya is automating 75% of that. So that's been a great experience. I would encourage you guys to check it out. They have an interesting demo on their website.
Awesome. So for brands who are looking to implement bots who haven't yet, or maybe did and need a little bit more support, are you guys seeing that it's mainly like looking for consulting? Is it full service agencies that they're looking to hire, or hire internally? What is kind of the common sentiment that you guys are seeing?
So I think this is again changing depending on the type of deployment we are talking about. Since this was mostly experimental or or all kinds of POCs or tactical solutions, usually relying on external consultants or companies, or maybe even trying off-the-shelf platforms to do it. The more these solutions become strategic and enterprise-wide, of course, the way they are developed is changing. Sometimes internal teams are taking over and using the technologies themselves and creating it internally. It also depends on the type of solution we are talking about. There are consumer-facing solutions that are chatbot-based, and as was mentioned here, also internal enterprise systems that are not consumer-facing, that are employee-facing or dealing with internal processes. So depending on the type of solution, also the way to source it is different.
For sure. Cool. So Austin, do you want to say something? Go ahead.
Steal your microphone. I was just having a conversation before the panel, actually, about this issue and how a few years ago, the budget line typically was an innovation team that was looking to experiment on some of these bot rollouts, and that's increasingly been shifted over to the business unit. And part of that, I think, is just the maturation of the industry. So it's an insight that I've seen.
Yeah, that's a great point. And from the VC side then, as you guys saw when Andy asked, who's working on a chatbot platform, a lot of people in this room are, and we've seen so many chatbot platforms pop up over the last few years. So from the VC side, are you guys looking to invest in chatbots such as Maya, like you mentioned, or do you have a focus on platforms, or is it kind of in between? What does the environment look like right now?
So for us, I think our framework is a little bit different from that. I've spent a lot of time in China, and I've kind of noticed the trend around messaging 7 years ago, consumer to business messaging, without automation. And the difference, I think, in China versus the US is that labor is affordable in China, and also platforms are not fragmented. There's WeChat and there's WeChat. So the set of problems, I think, in the United States are just a little bit different. But it was very obvious to me that the trend that people in China saw was going to be replicated in some different way in the US. And I think things was 3 or 4 years ago, I started looking at the space, thinking through systems to provide artificial intelligence for conversations between consumers and companies. And I think the first year I noticed a lot of experiments, a lot of innovation budgets, a lot of focus on content marketing, e-commerce use cases. And over time, that has changed quite a bit. So today, I kind of bucket the opportunities in 2 ways. One is companies that are able to bring down the cost for an organization, whether that's for marketing, for customer support, for HR, for some line of business, dramatically with a solution. And the other set of opportunities is along creating new revenue streams, right? So if you think about any kind of brand, right now they sell via retailers. Let's say Pantene sells via retailers, pays retailers X amount of dollars, 20-25% margins, and in a theoretical world, Pantene can go and sell directly to every single consumer, right? So that's another type of services which was too expensive for Pantene to provide, but now is theoretically possible with conversational AI. I focus most of my efforts on the first, which is mostly around cost elimination. Because I think cost elimination is an area where there are opportunities to build a good enough product and experience that people are willing to engage. The second part around cost elimination is I've tried to stay away from relying on the end consumer adoption, right? So in the case of Maya, the candidates are very, very much willing and eager to engage with Maya. Whereas if I am a shopper looking for my next shampoo, I may or may not be willing to engage with a conversational AI solution if it starts being not very good from an experience perspective. So the 2 buckets are cost elimination and also experiences where consumer behavior change is not a criteria. Now, I think that would change as products become better, as we move away from our winter. More and more experiences will be adopted by consumers, and I think there will be a tremendous amount of opportunity in the coming years.
Sure, yeah, I'll add to that. That was a great response. And take a slightly different approach. One of the challenges I think in venture investing is understanding where you're at in a particular market. And certainly for us, 2 years ago when we first made our investments in this space, we took essentially a picks and shovels approach. So what are the tools that will enable chatbots to be more functional, for these interactions to be enhanced? And what's happened since that time is we're now starting to see particular conversational interfaces actually generating revenue for the first time. So it's moving away from the experiments, away from the innovation budgets I mentioned before, to actual revenue generation. And that can either be in the form of obviously processing payments, and it goes a little bit to the panel that we just had before, where you're trying to find the particular verticals where there's a really interesting conversations that can be monetized. And that's our mindset right now. So we're trying to identify which verticals are most attractive right now. And so that just brings up a whole host of different questions, because then we have to really think very closely about what those interactions are like and what platforms will enable people to actually process those payments. We know that there's some companies here that are focused on stadiums and sports experiences. We've been looking in hotels and the hospitality industry. So trying to understand what are those first verticals that will be adopted early and provide revenue generation.
Fantastic. Well, I want to leave a little bit more time than we were able to last time for audience questions. So with that, let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you so much for your insights. Okay, we got our MC. So questions, raise your hands, and you can take my mic actually if you want.
Channeling my Daniel San power. Which person would like to ask their question first? Whew. Anyone? All right, cool, we got a taker.
Hi. So I think last panel said winter is coming, and you basically said you're seeing an uptick in the monetization of the chatbots and all. So that's question one. Second is, as we design these chatbots, right, for enterprise and all, how impactful is it for the brand going forward? Right?
The first part of the question was, why is it that these experiences are, you might want to have I just have to follow up with that. The first question was why it is that certain platforms are now being monetized?
No, I think what I heard in the previous panel was, we're going to go through a trough, right? Winter is coming, blah, blah, blah. What I'm hearing from you is, guys, I think we have a baseline now, and there's a steady uptick in the monetization of chatbot. That's what your point was, right?
Right, yeah. Well, actually, to be more clear, we're finding that particular new forms of conversation are being monetized, not necessarily chatbots per se. So if you take what is traditionally, let's say, a phone call interaction, like a hotel where you call downstairs to order a cheeseburger, and you allow that to then go to, say, a messaging platform, will that enhance the customer experience and actually enable them or increase the amount of orders that they have? Right? If we're all just sitting focused on our phones all the time, chatting with our friends, is allowing for that as a channel for ordering food or room service suddenly a more attractive option? And so we're trying to sort of find ways where the channels can actually expand. And that isn't necessarily fully automated. That can often be human-to-human interaction, but just with a different channel.
The second question was in terms of brand impact by chatbots. Do you have the panel, does it have any kind of opinions around it? How impactful would be the design and delivery of a chatbot for the company's brand image?
Well, you probably have a better answer to this. Yeah.
So I think that these 3 years we've been nurturing basically the concept of chatbots, and I think that brands are beginning to warm up to it. So the traditional benefits of chatbots, which is ease of use, nothing to learn, you can just chat, and that's the tool you know how to use, being mobile friendly, being available everywhere. It can also be text and voice. It's true for both. So I think brands are beginning to warm to that, and given that the implementations are of high quality, they start seeing this as a valuable tool. So, and since they understand this is a valuable tool, they now start deploying this in more and more use cases. So I think we have reached a point where we can start seeing global deployments based on these core values that chatbots bring as a user interface, because chatbots are just a user interface. So we now start seeing brands ticking a checkbox, like saying, we have a website, we need a chatbot also. So, and this is where we are trying to push for, to make this a checkbox, a checklist item for any enterprise that has a website and other tools to use this new medium as one of their main tools.
Would you be able to share using metrics, sort of the most familiar, the best brand chatbots that you're familiar with?
Was that for me?
Just each of you maybe, what's the most successful brand chatbot that you know based on some metrics that you can share, if possible?
There are a few numbers that I cannot disclose the brand, but we can relate to retention and repeat users higher of 90% across multiple engagements, not just one or two. We can cite very high user satisfaction from the experience. We can see very high level of participation in surveys and in interactions that require user involvement. So in many aspects, the interaction with chatbots is accepted as a very satisfactory experience for consumers.
I've got a question. Bo, did you want to chirp in? I think you should.
You're going to be disappointed with my answer.
Okay.
But I think the way that I think about metrics is more, what is the addressable amount that a chatbot can replace, and how much of that have we currently replaced? So for example, we have another investment called Radiance Labs, which builds a conversational AI solution for two very narrow use cases for brands. One is reordering, and the second is shopping cart abandonment. So reminding you that you have stuff in your shopping cart. And the most interesting metric is for every single reorder that a consumer used to do in a different channel, how much of that has moved to this chatbot, right? And I think that has been really, really, really powerful so far. In the case of Maya, Maya has largely taken over every single of their customers' behavior when they used to use people to do screening for blue collar, right? And it's either pilot with a very, very small number of potential hires all the way to 100% penetration. And so they have, for example, a partnership with Adecco where Adecco pays them $6 million to do this as one data point. So we're talking about a huge amount of hires per year.
I like the answer. I don't know. What about you guys? I think so.
Just to add to that, I think the simplicity of the interactions is what makes them most attractive, right? So it's not shooting for the moon and actually creating something that has real value that isn't actually all that complex, doesn't have a wide amount of options for the responses. And that's something I think we've seen as well. And I was having another discussion before this panel as well, and thinking about what are the areas that are attractive, gifting, ordering things where you don't have a large set of options. So such as like flowers, for instance. I bought flowers a couple days ago for my mother's birthday. I'm a good son. And I just chose the first one that I saw. So I think sometimes there's these things where you don't need to have a huge catalog. You're just looking for a quick purchase. In which case the kind of chatbot interaction actually lends itself to those easy choices. So yeah, I just want to follow that up.
All right, I've got a question. I'd like to maybe everybody can chirp in. What are the qualities and traits that you're looking for in a botrepreneur? Botrepreneur, okay? The idea is that typically you've got the jockey and the horse is a bot horse. But you've got this jockey, and everybody might look the same because they're all riding on the same technologies off a paper from the 1980s or whatever it was. But what are the qualities that you're looking for in a botrepreneur to throw money at them or their project specifically, so that these people can have you throw money at them? Hashtag botrepreneur. I mean, as a botrepreneur yourself, I'd be curious the traits that you think are most fundable as well.
Just reiterating the point that I made before about a move for us towards more vertically integrated markets, rather than looking at somebody who maybe has particular expertise, deep expertise in how to make a more complicated conversational flow. We're actually really interested in folks that have deep contacts in a particular industry and understand the customer problems, understand the sales cycle, understand how they can market to that particular customer segment. So the gentleman that was sitting in this seat before, the panel before, was talking about the skincare industry. And you know, that's attractive to me, to have somebody who can come in with expertise and walk through all of those problems that the customers are facing. The likelihood of someone like that being able to supply a product that's actually in need in the market is relatively high. So
I think for us, we actually don't really care if you're working on bots or shoes or socks or going to space. You've got to realize, as a venture capitalist, I'm seeing probably 1,000 different companies per year, right? My partnership probably sees 4,000 different companies per year, and we invest between 6 to 8 of them. So the odds to start with are not good. Now, the things that we look for, I think, is someone who has an intense amount of grit. I think we look for people who have a growth mindset, in that they're not satisfied with whom they are today because they want to be a better person tomorrow. And the reason for that is because if you're building a company that has the potential to get to 100 million revenues, that has the potential to go public, the growth of the company and what the company needs is probably growing faster than the person, right? So that person has to be able to grow as quickly to service the needs of the company, right? So that part is really important. And I think the third part is that you have to tell a good enough story to us and to your customers and to the people you want to recruit, that you are incredibly special, that you have a secret, that you're unique, that we should be, falling in love with you, and we should be begging you to work with you. So those are more the fundamental traits of any entrepreneur, irrespective of the space. And I think for the bot space in specifically, there's an element that you cannot control, which is market adoption, which is how fast budgets are shifting. But what you can control, everything else, we want to make sure that you are kind of the right person to solve those problems.